Shazam, issue 13, Josie Campbell writing with Mike Norton on art. So, Billy disappeared with the Rock of Eternity at the end of issue
Mm-hmm.
12, and this issue is narrated primarily by Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
And Freddy kind of stretches reality a little bit. I love the editor's note because he's basically, I mean, there's a little tease for the monsters in the subway for later because there's this woman on the subway who doesn't want to
Yeah.
help this homeless man who's begging for help. She thinks he's scary, but there's actually a monster. I'll just mention
Yeah.
it quickly because we'll get back to it later when they show up. But Freddy's saying, oh, how much he loved being a superhero and he misses his powers and all the rest of it. But Billy's disappeared, so he's now the head person to go and look for him. And there's a panel here where it says artistic interpretation of real events, and he's got the neighbor he likes, Bo, the one that just moved in next door, is like hugging him and saying, "Oh, Freddy, you're so cool. You're going to have to go find your brother who's ran away. You're such a hero," or something to that effect. And there's an editor's note at the bottom that just says, "This did not happen, Freddy."
Yes.
Credited
It says Billy did run away in Shazam 12, but this conversation never happened. Never, Freddy. And it's not even the editor. That's Josie Campbell.
Yeah, it's the writer who's actually credited with that note, and I thought that was very funny.
Yep.
Yeah. So all good stuff. So he takes the Shazvan. I'm just gonna call it the Shavan, okay? This Shazvan is stupid, right?
Okay.
But he takes the Shavan with Mary and Tawny to go and try and find Billy. And because the Hoppy, the bunny, is connected to the Rock of Eternity, it can trace where it is. So they're following the signal, as it were. And he's basically saying, Freddy that is saying, "Oh yeah, I'm here because you don't have a driving license, Mary." And she just sort of grumbles to herself, "I'm going to go to college in New York. I don't need one." So I crack out of that as well.
Yeah.
On you go.
And so they're going through the looking for an entrance to the Rock of Eternity, and they come across what are called ghost stations, and it's essentially it's cheaper to seal up old subway entrances than to demolish them, and Philly has a ton of them, and so they on this one is.
Do you happen to know if that's based on a real thing, or is that just something?
I think that's true. I mean, I don't know if it's in Philly, but I know in New York there's some that are like that, right? Because, I mean, pop culture can be believed. Because there's a whole subplot in Ghostbusters 2, right? When they're tracing all the goo, where they find the ghost station.
I know a lot of movies have a lot of old unused subway tunnels and stuff, but
I'm sure that's true, knowing how public planning goes. That if it is cheaper to seal them up than to just demolish them, I mean, they're probably just sealed.
To be fair, I never even took this though as that the tunnels aren't being used. It's more just that this station isn't used. Yeah. So they've just sealed it off rather than
and the train doesn't stop there anymore. It's no longer a stop. It just goes straight through. But there's this weird eye painted on, which will come later, spray painted there.
Yeah, because when they go into the station and they're surprised to find all these monsters attacking people, and this is what was teased in the first scene. I think it's the same woman actually that may be running from the train right now. So it's like, oh shit, what are we going to do here? And this is when we cut to Billy, who's in a subway station somewhere, probably down the line. He's talking to the captain and sort of the reflection on the. Well, it's not even a reflection really. He's just kind of seen him in the wall. But he's like, hey, what have we done here? Like, why? You only picked me because I was the only kid that was available. That's why I am the champion. There's no other reason. He didn't want a broken kid, and he was really down in his luck. And that's when one of these monsters from up the subway shows up here, and the captain starts saying, "Hey, quickly say the word, Billy. Say the word." And Billy is getting pinned down, and it's almost like Billy's refusing to say it, despite the fact that there's a monster to fight. Yeah. Cut back to the other team, and Mary's Shazammed up. We get a full page spread of her punching a monster in full costume. It's a very nice page. Norton, because obviously last issue it was Lupacino and Norton, and I think we said that Norton, well, he's not maybe quite on the level of Lupacino, is very close in style, and I think it's still very good here. Like, I still enjoyed a lot of the art.
It's a lot more bouncy, if that makes sense. Like his art has more like rounded edges than Lupacino's and stuff, so it definitely stands out. So when it's all of it lines up, Hey, here, but you kind of skimmed over a thing about the Rock of Eternity, where
Sure.
it's a nexus of a power and it's tied to the magic of the universe. It can't just be put in Billy's house. So the captain's trying to tell him, like, it's not just a holding cell for dangerous material, like magical objects. If it's landed here, there's a reason why. So it's almost like it's being called back to the subway station, which I feel was something that Josie Campbell was hinting at in her Mary book, in some of those issues. And we'll get, to why is that again later. There's some payoff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they end up fighting these creatures. They're kind of like, I'm trying to describe what they're kind of like. They're kind of hairy, almost like werewolves, but they're not wolves. They're, almost gremlin-like at the same time, but they're like human-sized. So they ended up fighting them, and Freddy ends up making his way to the front of the train.
Well, first of all, they end up on a train, right? That's right. First things first. They end up on one of the trains, and Mary's like beating a bunch of them up. And there's some fun stuff here where Hoppy opens a portal in the middle of the. No, it's not even the roof of the train. It's just in the middle of the train, but it's a portal that sort of comes out at the top of the train. So Mary like shoves the demon or monster out of the hole, and its head bonks off the pipe at the top of the subway tunnel. So just really fun little playful stuff like that. That fun vibe that this book has had is not went anywhere. No. I will say, if the art falters, it might be in a couple of these pages where, for example, when Freddy goes up to the front of the train and he's trying to figure out how to stop it or whatever. There's a panel of Mary yelling Freddy as Freddy's talking over the comms, and the face just kind of feels a bit stretched out to me. There's just a little kink here or there with something like that.
Yeah, kind of that whole page feels like that too, because Freddy does feel like that as well, right below.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe there was a bit of a rush to get everything done in time, so a couple of pages suffered.
But I do see that Hoppy also has an affection for Freddy, because Freddy feeds him all the good wood chips. Right. So he's not going to let these monsters hurt him. So he teleports them, back out of the train. Which leads to now, because Mary can understand them now, right? Because she's powered up. Because before this, they're all talking in a language, and it's translating some of the bits. But this is where they claim to be the what were they called? The submen.
Yeah, the submen. They're the
submen.
Yeah, what was surprising here is that one of them pulls out like an old school pistol, like an old. This is the pistol from Predator 2. If anyone wants a comparison point,
or like a pirate pistol.
Sure.
It's one of those one shots.
But one of them pulls one of those out and says, the might of the gods, belongs to us, blah blah. And Mary's like powering up. She's going to electrify the tracks to sort of take them out, which she does. It's a great full page spread. All the lightning coming up. It's a glorious moment. But one of them afterwards grabs her, and she's pretty weak because she's just expended so much energy. And as she's being grabbed by this one monster, a crowbar comes flying in and says, "Leave her alone." And the next page is Billy's there as a kid, and he's with Uncle Marvel, aka Dudley. Who was briefly in the Mary book, which it does have an editor's note here saying. But yeah, so it's like, okay, we're bringing this old school character into the story. How we're going to use him, I don't know. But it does raise some questions, is exactly how did Billy get away from that monster? I mean, you assume Uncle Marvel here showed up and helped him, but how did he help him? Did he just throw a crowbar at that one? Like, it feels like there's something they're not telling us here about how that scene ended.
Yeah, so the way that they show up too with him, because when she saw Dudley, he didn't have powers. Now he does.
Does he?
So where'd that come from?
What do you mean he has powers? Explain how he has powers.
So he's here as Uncle Marvel, right? And he's different, right? He has the lightning bolt kind of. It looks like taped onto him.
Yeah.
So
Matt, Uncle Marvel isn't supposed to have powers. That's why it's taped on. He was kind of like their supporter, like back in the old school comics.
Right.
Uncle Marvel doesn't have powers. At least as far as I know, he's never had powers.
Okay, but what I'm still saying here is it seems like almost like Billy, because he had said he doesn't want the power, right? It just chose some kid, and if the Rock of Eternity is meant to be this nexus, then maybe he tried to pass the power off to Dudley, and now that's how he is.
Well, I mean,
why would he call himself Uncle Marvel?
Well, because he's a fan, basically. I don't think there's any evidence on these pages that he has powers.
All right, I'm just there's something to it.
Well, don't get me wrong. There's definitely a story as to how he got down here and is starting to help and whatever's going on. Like I'm sure there's more to it, but I think the fact that his logo is taped onto his red T-shirt is an indication that he does not have powers and he's just being a fanboy. So
I mean, but then what's up with the Shazam? That's off of. That's not Billy. Billy's not transformed.
What Shazam are we talking about? What Shazam are you talking about?
So when the creature has Mary up, right, and the crowbar comes in, there's a Shazam from off panel.
Yeah, well, I assume that's the captain going back into Billy.
But he wasn't transformed, right? Because when the last we saw him,
well, yeah, we don't know how that scene ended, but like clearly some stuff has changed since then. I don't think. Like, maybe I'll be surprised in next issue Dudley will have some powers, but I don't think that's what's happened here.
That's how I'm reading it, because this issue is also about Freddy missing the powers, right? And if Billy has learned to share them again, right, then he can also pass this off to, because it seems like he also doesn't want the responsibility, right? So if he's trying to pawn this off on Dudley, right, now we get a super powered, for at least an issue, Uncle Marvel. This also could be the bridge to Freddy getting the powers again.
I mean, maybe he has, but there's nothing on these couple of pages with them to suggest that to me. So,
yeah.
I mean, no, we've discussed it at this point. I don't think there's anything else to add to it.
No, I know.
I just don't think there's anything here to suggest that. But we'll find out next issue if it is. But there is obviously a story as to how that scene with Billy ended, which I'm sure will be explained next time. And like how Dudley ended up down here and exactly what's going on. But I mean, we'll see. But the end of the issue is that Freddy's trying to stop the train because he's still on the train. He's not with everyone else. And this character appears in front of the train with this magic can of spray paint, is the best I can describe it, which makes that eye symbol that was on the cover on the other subway entrance.
Station cover. Yep.
And it turns into like a portal, seemingly, and the train goes through this sort of like almost psychedelic portal looking thing, and like it's going through a bunch of different stuff, and then Freddy has landed in the lair where all these monsters come from, and their leader is King Kull, who is the leader of the Submen. He's got a kind of similar shape to them, but he's not the same. He's got more of a closer to human sort of skin tone with like sort of like he's hairy though. I guess you could say he's kind of like a mix between a werewolf and like a yeti or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's very yeti like. Yeah, because he's kind of he has bigger proportions. They're kind of smaller, or like maybe like an orc from like fantasy, right?
Yeah,
something along those lines. So, but yeah, he looks he's more lively than the rest of the Submen.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, it's a fun issue. I think all the Freddy stuff with him narrating early on was really entertaining, so I enjoyed that. I liked the team up of Mary and Freddy, and the fact that it got to focus on them a little bit more. And then all the stuff on the train was actually a really fun action sequence, and that takes up the majority of the back half of the book. So, that was a really solid issue. Still really digging the run. Yeah. And the art's pretty good overall. Obviously, there's a few panels here or there that we kind of talked about being a little bit off, but for the most part, the big action scenes look really good. The performances, the character expressions are generally pretty solid, barring those few exceptions. And the colors pop quite well. Nice, vibrant, bright. Particularly the reds, obviously, which is important. The red and the blue for Freddy as well. Yep. For a book about these characters. So, very good. So, yeah. So, what are we giving Shazam, Matt?
I'm gonna give this a 7.5.
I think I'm happy enough to still give it the 8 out of 10. I wouldn't go above that for this. Those minor art quibbles kind of sticking out. And I'm curious to see where we're going with this Billy stuff that they're that they're seeding. But yeah, we'll see. Correct me if I'm wrong. When we met Dudley and new champion of Shazam, he was hanging about in the subway, right?
He was hanging about in the subway, and he was helping the in-house people. So
that would explain why he's nearby, at the very least.
Right.
So we'll see how that goes.
And there's something that The Rock is drawn to back in the subways. You know, there's something about the subways under Philly, because that's where Billy got his powers. There's something about there. So.
I don't think it's the subway itself. It's probably just what's underneath the subway, rather than, you know. I don't think the Rock of Eternity gives a shit about the Metropolitan.
No, it's not the subway, but it's the location, right? It's almost like it's a place of crossroads, and crossroads are big in Magic.
This is the subway track that Dennis Hopper get decapitated on at the end of Speed, and it's like a nexus now for magical energy.